This podcast is offered by the San Francisco Zen Center on the web at www.sfzc.org. Our public programs are made possible by donations from people like you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi. I'm going to take a sip of this, and I feel a little guilty doing so. I'll have to pass it around. It feels very special to be gathered together. Tonight is Saturday, so it's the last night for several people who will be leaving tomorrow, who've been here as guests, and who've been here with Sangha weeks. Several different Sanghas are visiting this week. And so I just wanted to take a moment to just encourage us together, gathered here together, whatever provisional category we're in. Student, resident, Sangha week person, guest, first-time guest, pilgrim. When I was living, I used to call guests who would come every year pilgrims. This is a practice place. Tassajara is a practice place. And I always felt that whoever came here was going to be practicing, no matter what you called yourself, guest, student. So I wanted to just take a moment to just encourage us. I confess, let me just say right away, thank you, Abbot Mako, for the opportunity, the invitation to just share a few words of what I hope will be encouragement or comfort, maybe inspiration, but at the very least, maybe something interesting to consider. And I also want to say hello to Paul, expressing gratitude, Galen, to my elders, just feeling deep gratitude for a practice life, the opportunity to live a practice life. I'll warn you, I'm Mediterranean, so I may cry. I'm okay. I hope you'll be okay. It's deeply moving to be here. This is what I was about to say. Especially if it is your last night, to encourage all of us right here, right in this Dharma talk, to just simply feel whatever it is that you're feeling. Part of me, I wondered whether I would say this, wants to go around and just put my hands on your shoulders, each one of you, making contact, body to body, not as an adjustment or any kind of postural correction, but just simply making contact, body to body. I do this in my Sangha kind of regularly, and I really appreciate, with permission, the opportunity to connect like that. To go, oh yeah, bodies. Here we are embodied on this planet. This planet body. And it does feel while we're at Tassajara, and I feel this in other places too, but maybe I feel it more deeply because I was trained here. For my body to be in relationship with other bodies, other human bodies, rattlesnake bodies, rock bodies, the creek body, the mountain bodies. To have the chance to actually live my life and not just think my way through it with all of my assumptions and conclusions and critiques. So yeah, if you haven't yet, hello body, just sitting here together as practitioners, each and every one of us, in this practice of being human, feeling the support that's right here underneath each one of us, holding us, receiving us, our cushion, our chair, the earth beneath this wonderful wood floor. And then how we extend up and out from that. You know, when I offer Zazen instruction, a lot of times I'll think of a sunflower. You know, sunflowers planted, but these incredibly long stems that allow for flexibility. You know, in sunflower, for anyone who speaks Spanish here, girasol, turning to the sun, turning to light, our faces turning to light. When I say that to people on the North Shore of Boston, I always think of the sunflowers in the lower garden. When I was practicing, have you seen them? When I was practicing here, sometimes they could reach 12 feet tall. Those are the sunflowers I think of to this day, 20 years later. When I experience my own body and I want to encourage other bodies in Zazen, in this practice of being human. 8:50. Who knows? 8:15. Oh, 8:40. Okay. I promise we're going to end on time. So there's an astrophysicist in the valley among us. And ever since I learned of this, I've been thinking about Tassajara as a telescope. You know, with a telescope, there's an aperture. It's not that big, but with focusing, looking deeply into that aperture, the whole cosmos is revealed. I've been seeing Tassajara as like this. We're all here, so we've all experienced the road. We have that in common. So we know we're deep in the mountains here. But especially if you drove in, you know how steep the descent is. How deeply in and down we've gone. There's a psychological aspect to this of entering kind of a pretty narrow valley, being surrounded by mountains, being able to look up and see mountains, to experience mountain bodies with our body. And so I've been kind of, in the last few days, just sort of thinking about this, of entering this narrow space, how it kind of feels like in the specificity of Tassajara, this is a Soto Zen practice place. In addition to being, I don't know what you call it, what guests call it. Is it a hot springs resort? I don't know. There's a specificity to this place and the practices here and the life here. But we shouldn't be fooled by that. I have this sense of this movement of going in deeply in order to come back out again, or to open back out again. And I do feel that each one of us, again, no matter what the provisional category is, we're coming deeply into ourselves. And from there, opening back up again. How wonderful for the world when we all get back in our vehicles and drive out. For a human being to make that kind of contact with themselves, whether or not you cognize that. So here's a teaching. It's a very short, it's just one sentence from ancestor Dogen Zenji, Eihei Dogen. You still hearing me okay? Great. Okay. Because I really want everybody to hear this beautiful phrase, which maybe many people have heard before. It's worth repeating and keeping close. Although we say that mountains belong to the country, actually, they belong to those who love them. Mountains belong to those who love them. So I want to just focus on 3 words. Mountains, belong, and love. I just want to say a few things about each of those words. You know, and I encourage you to join me in this study, this inquiry of these words. You know, interact. Engage with this for yourself. Mountains. You've been with them for 50 years here at Tassajara. Some of you for the first time. Maybe today's your first day here ever. Is there anybody in the Zendo right now for the first time tonight in this meditation space? Okay. When I hear this phrase, when I think of the word mountain, or when I see these mountains, there's a phrase in Zen when we're training to sit like a mountain, to experience that magnificence, that stability, that solidity, that apparent unmovingness. And I say apparent because, according to Dogen and others, the mountains, along with everything else, are moving. Even us. Even those Buddhas you see, if you're new to Tassajara, sitting in the Zendo, they look so still. Because they're alive, they're necessarily moving. Our heart is beating and the blood is circulating. So when we talk about the stillness of mountains, we're really talking about the aliveness of mountains. A kind of aliveness that includes stability. No. And so when I'm here, I'm deeply encouraged by being able to relate with these mountains. It's like a check-in. It reminds me of my own mountain nature. Belong. Belong is, has become an important word in justice spaces, racial justice, social justice. There are now, departments of equity, inclusion, diversity, and belonging. What is it to belong? I think it's a primary need that we all have, to belong, to have a sense of belonging. The other side of this that I just want to propose, especially as me, who's trying to lead a Sangha, maybe another way for practitioners to think about this belonging is taking your place, showing up fully, completely, entering that circle of belonging that never excluded you to begin with. Yes, there are structural issues we're working on, systemic issues of racism. But in a place like this, Tassajara, mountains, This is an interesting practice to take up, I think. What is it to take our place in the circle of belonging? What is it to take our place in the circle of belonging that includes the mountains kind of encircling us? We're kind of in the midst of these mountains. There's another mountain I wanted to just bring in the context of this word belong. I'll make a big leap. The mountain is Kilimanjaro. Has anybody been there, seen it, experienced it? Okay. So, our Sangha has a dear friend named Esther. She seems to pop up in all my Dharma talks no matter where I am. She's Kenyan. And I went with her a few times to Africa, to Kenya in particular, 2 times. And she is Kikuyu, which is one of the 42 tribes of Kenya. And Kikuyu people, maybe you've met Kikuyu, maybe you never knew, but if you met a Kikuyu person, have a kind of power. It's very interesting. I first started using the kotsu. This is a kotsu. Several years after I received one, because I didn't really know what it was for. I didn't really feel a connection with using it until I saw a Maasai elder holding something like this. The Maasai people are another tribe in Kenya we met. We were at an ordination ceremony of Maasai elders, and one of the elders was carrying what we would call a kotsu, and shared with me that it was his responsibility to his village to carry the kotsu. His responsibility. Now, connected with this sense of responsibility is something Esther told me about belonging that I want to share with you. First of all, it started with, I called her my friend. She never called me her friend, but she did call me her sister. And one time I asked her, why don't you call me your friend? And she said, well, I call you my sister because friends can come and go, but sisters, no matter what, are with you for life. That was like the first layer of commitment. And then a few years later, she told me, Joan, we have a saying in our language. You actually belong to me. You belong to me. And I got very nervous about that. I started to feel uncomfortable, constricted, trapped. Not sure this is something I want to sign up for. And just in the last few days, I've been thinking about this belonging. In the context of mountains belong to those who love them, I'm thinking about this belonging. It's going to lead us right into love. Are you ready for this kind of belonging? By the way, this you belong to me, the constriction I felt, also reminded me of a term, a phrase, an image we use in Zen for Zen practice and training, like a snake in a bamboo tube. That kind of constriction. We call it the container here, to hold us. There's another way of seeing this as simply being embraced, being hugged into the circle of belonging. Are we ready for that? So love, what is it? What is love? Maybe it's one of the most important practices we can engage in as human beings, the practice of love. You know, it's a bit of a surprise, for me anyway, to hear in Dogen's writings, whether or not this is a particular translation. He doesn't say mountains belong to those who care for them, who care about them, who climb them. I once asked, when we were at the base of Kilimanjaro, I was in a little bar in a town called Kimano, right at the base of the mountain. The only non-African there. And I asked one of our guides, have you ever climbed Kilimanjaro? And he laughed and he said, only white people do that. So that's here too, and this mountains belong to those who love them. In my own training here in Tassajara, I don't remember us using the word love specifically so much. We used words like compassion, loving kindness. But it's very interesting to me that Dogen, Zenshinji, at least in this translation, the word is love. Mountains belong to those who love them. I want to say to each one of us, whatever you've been doing for the last 2 days, the last week, the last few months, the last few years here at Tassajara, I wonder if this might be our practice, our foundational, unifying practice, again, whether or not we realize it. These human beings who've gathered here, right now, us, in this room, it's extraordinary. We've all come from such different places. We've come from these apartments and these houses scattered all over the place. And we got into our various vehicles to arrive here, in this very specific place, at this specific moment. So I have a specific request for you. If you're interested. I know that we're in a season of big change here at Tassajara. I know it. I feel it. I see it. And I think for some people, this is the first time coming back since before the pandemic. That's 5 years. So this is big for some people who've been coming for a long time, guests, students, practitioners. You know what, hey, I think about this, I was born in 1966, that's a long time ago. And did we start inhabiting Tassajara as a Zen practice place that year, 66? Is it 67? It was around that time, right?
I think 67.
Yeah, so around that time. I know all I've been through in my life. It was going to happen at some point. One of my favorite things that Paul Haller told me was simply, so what? That was very helpful. So what? Again, with love. So what? My Portuguese grandfather, there was a rocking chair in their kitchen, my grandparents' kitchen. He'd rock in this rocking chair. And my grandmother, he was Portuguese, she was French-Canadian. He didn't speak English, neither did he. Neither spoke the other's language, and they were married successfully for 50 years or so. But she would buzz by back and forth. I'd watch her buzz by in the kitchen back and forth, and he'd just sit in that rocking chair. And if you caught his eye, he'd go. Connect that with this so what? And I'm connecting that now with this kind of love and the stability of the mountains and this belonging and this taking our place. Come on, all of us. Here's the question. Yes, we should know by now the truth of change, whether or not you're a Zen student. We should all know that life includes change. We know that, right? Okay. My question to you, here's where I might cry, is I would like, especially if you've been coming here for many, many years, and you're experiencing, yes, the enormous change. I know the Dharma of the napkin table. I headed the dining room crew in 2001, I think it was. And one person who couldn't find their napkin had a meltdown. She felt like she didn't belong here, that she was some kind of imposter because she couldn't find her napkin. It's like your ticket in. I understand that. But I would like to ask you, if you're stumbling with this week at Tassajara, to find one thing that you love here that has not changed. The reason this makes me want to cry is because it reminds me of my root teacher, Darlene Cohen, who had rheumatoid arthritis, and when she was flattened in bed and couldn't move, the one thing that helped her, a body worker said to her, I want you to find one place in your body of pain, one place, it doesn't matter how small it is, that doesn't hurt, and place your attention there. Place your love there. Doesn't matter how small it is. And from there, expand. It takes courage, it takes confidence, it takes practice. And you can do it. And I would love, if you'd like, if anybody is struggling with these changes here this summer, to tell me what you find, what you land on tomorrow morning in the courtyard, before you leave, if you're leaving tomorrow. One thing that you've discovered at Tassajara, your beloved Tassajara, that hasn't changed. So this mountains belong to those who love them. Tassajara belongs to those who love it. Mm-hmm. I just want to say, is Heather here? No, I didn't mean to bust her. The director, who holds a lot, maybe in this love, if you also have been stumbling a little bit, and you do discover that one little thing that hasn't changed at Tassajara that you love, maybe you share it with the director before you leave, in addition to me. I'd love to hear it. So mountains belong to those who love them. Tassajara belongs to those who love it. We belong to the mountains. We belong to Tassajara because guess what? We belong to each other. We belong to each other. Let's all realize it. Practice it. And enjoy it. Okay?
Thank you for listening to this podcast offered by the San Francisco Zen Center. Our Dharma talks are offered free of charge, and this is made possible by the donations we receive. Your financial support helps us to continue to offer the Dharma. For more information, visit sfcc.org and click Giving.